Ashley's a woman, and I think it lands differently than me, who's like, kind of like I'm like a 30-year-old guy. I'm kind of like prime pedophile age. So it's like it's just not as funny to be me and talk about pedophilia as it is to be her because she seems more disconnected from it.
Hi, I'm Zack Newmark, and this is Damn Yankee. Don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts for all the best interviews with comedians, artists, and authors based here in the Netherlands and those traveling through the country. Lucas Zelnick is a stand up comedian born, raised, and based in New York City, where he is right now. He challenges his cushy upbringing through punch heavy material. Lucas's stand up clips have exploded online, where he's received over 100 million views of his content and has 800,000 followers across Instagram and TikTok. He is performing at Amsterdam's Boom Chicago Theater in just a couple of months on September 8th, and tickets are on sale now. Lucas, thank you so much for joining us. We're really excited about your show.
Thank you for having me. How are you guys?
All right, where are you today?
I am at home in New York City.
All right, and I know you've got your own stand-up club out there, which I thought was super interesting. That it's kind of your way of almost sort of buying your own stage time in a way, and which is like super cool. I mean, can you tell me the story about how you actually ended up buying a club out there?
Yeah, well, we actually sold it now, so we don't own it anymore. All of it was kind of accidental. It was a friend of mine, Jamie Wolf, and I, who were writing scripts together, like roughly when the pandemic was coming to an end, and we wanted like an office space to write in. And because of the pandemic, retail space in New York City was super cheap. So we decided we would rent an office, and then we were both stand-up comedians, and we're like, well, I bet we could pay the rent for the office by doing shows in it. And then it turned out to be like a perfect room for comedy. And then the more we looked into it, the more we just did shows, and then it started to get written up, and it spread, and all of it was supposed to be like 3 months. We only rented the space for 3 months, but all the shows started selling out, and it kind of became known. And at the end of the 3 months, the person now who manages it and owns it, named Dave Hogsett, took it over and did a great job with it, and it's been like a pretty significant part of the New York City comedy scene since. Um, yeah,
Yeah,
but it was kind of an accident.
and it's not really an easy place to just sort of like buy a comedy club and set it up. I mean, there's so many great clubs that are there, and so many great clubs have failed or have closed down over the years too.
Yeah, I mean, that was, I think, what was we were just renting a space, so we never really, I mean, people will buy a club and that they'll buy like real estate or they'll buy a brand, but we made a brand and rented a space and then bought some chairs and a microphone. So like we were only in it for, a couple $1,000, and then we recouped that. And then we were kind of like, we had this month to month rent deal with these people who were very nice to us. And so we were kind of like, if we need to shut it down at any point, we can. But I think it was through, we just simply didn't care that much. And then that kind of like weirdly made it a better experience for everyone. I think like a lot of people try to make their comedy club a business, and we just tried to make our comedy club like a fun place to see comedy for cheap. And that ended up being like the thing that got it off the ground. And now, again, the guy that runs it has taken it a lot more seriously, and he does a good job with it. So.
I mean, tell me the difference between, your own stand-up career before starting this club and then what your stand-up career is like now.
Oh, I mean, yeah, that was kind of the thing that got me going, stand-up wise. Because when we started the club, I probably had like 5 minutes of material, and then we were producing 14 shows a week there. So I was doing 14 shows a week, which like now I've been, I guess, doing stand-up comedy full time for like 3 years, and working all the clubs in New York City, including that one because it's still around. And I'll probably do like 14 shows a week now. So that was like a lot of shows. And by the end of that summer, which was only 3 months, I went from doing 5 minutes to like 25 minutes, even though it was really bad. I got a lot of experience. And then shortly thereafter, people started watching my stuff on the internet, and that was kind of what launched my ability to become like a touring comedian.
Lucas, you don't own the club anymore, but when you had the club, you instead of having a liquor license right off the bat, I guess you were letting people bring in their own booze.
Thanks for the framing of that. Yeah. No, yes. So Lucas, in the past, you've committed a crime. Is that correct? Yeah, the club has a license now, beer and wine license, but at the time, the original space we were in, it like couldn't, so we just did it BYOB. I'm a New Yorker, and I realized that the city of New York is pretty lenient when it comes to artistic establishments of small scale, letting people bring drinks to a party. So that's, yeah, we let it be BYOB and just prayed that no one shut us down. And they
How
didn't.
many? Yeah, and you say small scale. I mean, how many seats was it at that time?
At that time, it's now more than doubled in size, but at that time it was 50 seats.
Yeah. So quite a small place indeed.
It was teensy. Yeah, it was like a little shoebox. Super fun. But yeah, we would let people BYOB. One time someone like threatened to beat me up because they were really drunk, and I was like, maybe we should think about this. But then just sort of like stopped thinking about it, and then it didn't happen again.
Why did they threaten to beat you up?
Because they were really drunk and interrupting the show, and I was on stage and like made fun of them. And he came up to me after the show and like pinned me in a corner and was like threatening to beat me up for like.
Do you remember the line that almost got your ass handed to you?
I think I said I'd like fuck his girlfriend or something. Like it wasn't like something that I said it and then after when he threatened to beat me up, I wasn't like, huh? Where's this coming from? It was more just like I said whatever. Especially at that time I was new into comedy. I would just say like if someone came at me, I would just be so vicious. These days I operate with a little bit more restraint, but I'm sure I just like completely dismantled this guy and everything about him in front of his girlfriend, and then mentioned that it was in front of his girlfriend, and then like talked about how embarrassing I imagine that would be to be like publicly humiliated in front of your girlfriend in front of a crowd, and then like ask the crowd to boo him. And like this is the difference between men and women, is if you did this to a woman, she'd probably cry. But if you do this to a man, he'll like threaten to kill you. So this is kind of why I prefer, when women come to my shows, people are like, women are worst crowds. I'm like, well, I actually sometimes prefer them. But yeah, this guy was like, I'll rock you. And I was like, what I do is I just put my hands behind my back, and then I'm like, you can beat me up, but you will have to assault me. Like, I'm not going to fight back. So you're just going to have to like really like beat me to a pulp. And then you're going to be like guilty of a crime. And it's no crime to say I'm going to fuck your girlfriend. Thank God. If it was a crime, I'd be in prison, my friend.
Is he your worst heckler?
I get people every once in a while that are just fucking assholes. These days, like, some people just come to a show and either like are not in the right headspace when they come, or they're having a bad time, or, for some people, which I think is actually fair, there's just certain topics that really set them off.
Mm-hmm.
I was talking about like Israel Palestine on my last tour, which we don't have time to get into, but like that's one where like people will get really upset when they don't agree with you, and I get it. But also like I had a place to speak on it from.
Right.
And I was saying pro-Palestine things, and there were people, as a Jew, and there were Jews coming out that were really not happy about that, and that was just sort of what it was. And so I get it. It's not like I'm not always shocked when someone speaks up or says like, fuck you, or this isn't funny. Like, I do get it. But at the same time, my job, the way I see my job now, is to keep it being funny under any circumstances. So whatever I need to do to you to make sure that my show goes well, if you step into that arena with me, I'm going to do it. And these days, I usually am not going to be mean if I can help it, just because I actually don't think that's the best thing for the show.
Yeah.
But, when I was new into comedy, being mean was like the best thing I could think of, because it would establish me very quickly in a position to not get heckled again. Whereas now it's like I have more, I have security, and I have like more things going on that, I don't have to be shitty to someone, because if someone's being shitty to me relentlessly, like I can just there's usually a club or a venue that will just come by and escort them out, and then I like don't have to deal with it.
Along those lines, is there a joke that you really fully believe in, but you just kind of haven't been able to make it work just yet?
I'm doing this joke about how I think the the people who did 9/11 must have been really close friends with each other to like all agree to a plot like that. Like the joke is about how like I asked my friend to get sushi and he's like, I had sushi yesterday, but these guys like did 9/11 together. And the joke is about how like I think the best part of Al Qaeda was like the friendships, and I just cannot get people to laugh at that one. I think it's funny though.
I think it's hilarious.
Thank you, Zach. Zach, you gotta come to the show, man. You're gonna love the show.
You know what? I'll be the loudest one in the room.
There we go. I'm kidding. I'm gonna bomb in Amsterdam too, but you guys should
No,
come to
man.
the show.
And
It's gonna sell
also,
out anyway. I saw the ticket counts, so if you don't want to come, don't come. Someone will.
and what was it, initially that kind of, helped you take off as a comedian? Was there one bit specifically that went viral? I know you do a lot of really good crowd work also.
Yeah, there were some jokes that I do that went viral at first. Jokes that I don't even do anymore. I used to like. I'm trying to think of the topics that I don't really touch as much. Like I used to do more race jokes, not like racist jokes, but jokes about race relations, which I sort of decided later was like I'm kind of the last guy you want to hear a race joke from. Just because I'm like, whiter than a plate. But I did some of those. Those did really well. And then I just kind of posted like whatever I thought was funny. And it was kind of a different time on the internet. There wasn't a lot of stand-up comedy. Stand-up comedy was starting to get watched by people. So I think it was a lot easier to have your clip get watched. And and then because people were watching my stuff, I was out in San Francisco at the time. I was actually in business school. So I was like still finishing up as a student, but people were offering me longer shows. So then I would do longer shows, and then to fill time on those shows, I would sometimes do crowd work, and then I would film that, and then I would put it back on the internet, and then more people would watch it, and then the more people that watched it, the more people would give me opportunities, and it was sort of like that back and forth process until I felt like I kind of was beginning to build an audience of my own that would come see me, and that gave me a lot more freedom. Obviously, for stand up, like the most valuable thing is stage time, ideally good stage time, and ideally stage time in front of crowds that are going to be fair to you and not overly generous or overly harsh.
Hmm.
People get stuck at open mics, the crowds are harsh. People get their own fan bases, the crowds are too generous. You kind of want to mix. I don't know what I have right now, but I certainly have a lot of stage time, and that's very helpful for getting better.
Well, if that's the case, I mean, what does it feel like for you, when you come out to in Amsterdam, or you come out, somewhere where maybe you're not as well known, or maybe your crowd isn't around? Is it
Zach,
is
I
it
am a household name in Amsterdam. I'm so famous in Amsterdam. I cannot walk the streets of Amsterdam. I don't even bike the streets as many of you do, because I'm so famous there. No, what is it like? Well, especially as I tour more, it's interesting because it's like as you get more well known, even in America, you can do bigger shows in your main markets. So like think of the major markets. For me, it's like all the major cities in America,
Mhm.
Boston, Chicago, New York City, Los Angeles, San Francisco, the list goes on there. So it's like, yeah, you can do bigger shows there, but then also you get big enough to do small shows in random places like Grand Rapids, Michigan, or Lexington, Kentucky, or just smaller cities. So when I go there, I'm usually doing a comedy club. Maybe some people come out to see me, but a lot of people come out just to see a comedy show. Um, I sort of prefer that sometimes because I think, I mean, this is just my experience of having people come out to see me, but the people that are coming out to see me expect it to be good.
Mhm.
And then, hopefully I can surpass their expectations and make it great. But the people that don't come out to see me I mean, most people expect stand-up comedy to be pretty bad. So then if it's even good, they're like kind of thrilled. So I don't mind. I think the less people know me, the more they'll be, the more they'll enjoy the show, as long as they're within my sort of general target demographic. I don't do very well. If you get to be like over 50 years old, it just gets to a place where you kind of stop thinking what I'm talking about is relatable or funny. And that's just something I've sort of made peace with. It's not to say old folks have never found me funny, but I prefer a younger audience.
I mean, we talked to Morgan Jay about that a little bit also. He was sat down with us a few weeks ago. And for him, I think it also seemed pretty interesting that when his career started, or when he started getting, attention for the work that he was doing, his crowds were, all almost completely below 30 or below 35.
Yeah.
And now, you go to his show, one of his big theater shows, and it's going to be, a whole range from like, late teens up to mid 60s there.
Hmm. Yeah, well, Morgan's bigger than I am, so maybe I'm just at the maybe I'm just at the earlier part of that curve. Um, but yeah, I mean, I encourage anyone that connects with it to see my shows, you
Well,
know?
yeah, of course. And I'm curious because you said that you were in business school. How is it that someone, what it's obviously it's not the typical stand-up trajectory, is going from like doing an MBA and going into going onto stages and driving your car around from town to town, performing one night shows and moving on to the next venue. So how is that you wound up in stand-up anyway?
I just want, a healthy dose of delusion mixed with a fair amount of narcissism was like what inspired me to do it. But I think I don't know, weirdly, like stand up now is probably the most businessy that it's ever been. Like obviously there's a craft and that's really important. But now the way that, the internet has taken over stand up and building your own audience has become crucial for stand-up comedians. There's a lot of like really entrepreneurial aspects. So I guess I was really lucky in that regard. I always wanted to be a comedian pretty much as soon as I at least like got out of college and I started trying comedy. I was like, I want to do this, but I feared it. So business school was sort of like an opportunity to have like a backup plan. And then I think it was the summer that I started that club and I was doing that many shows a week. It was a good sense of like, okay, I can do this schedule. I'm enjoying it. And like I'm not going crazy with the lack of structure. I think one thing I feared is like not having a day job or a place to be during the day. Would I get out of bed? Would I like, you know, shower? Like things that you don't have to do as a stand-up comedian are like wake up and shower. And those are like pretty crucial things that I think humans should be doing. Um, so I definitely had some like nervousness that I wouldn't be able to fulfill I thought I might slip into like a schedule-less depression. And then when I
Mhm.
had that summer, I realized I one, I thought I could live with the schedule, and two, I thought I was building enough skill to be able to do it professionally eventually. And so then I just focused my second year in business school on, a lot of people were starting companies. And I basically was like, I want to start the stand up career and get in a place where I could be a professional as soon as I graduate. And I used the resources at business school to help me look at starting my stand up career like a company. And that was helpful for me. They let me do like an independent study on it. And then when I graduated, I was able to go full time on stand up.
What was that your intention when you started business school in the first place?
Nah, my intention was to figure it out. My intention was to what I thought was like I wasn't gonna figure out stand up with a full-time job, and I also wasn't willing to just totally bail and start from zero and like do stand up full time because I wasn't good enough at stand up at that time and I didn't have any prospects of making money from it. And so the idea for business school was to be like a limbo to leave with the confidence of like either I want to be a comedian or I don't want to be a comedian. And
Mhm.
business school very much served that purpose for me. I don't recommend it. If you want to be a comedian, go be a comedian. Do not spend money on tuition at business school. I was lucky because my parents paid for it. So it was sort of like free for me. From my perspective, it was free. From
I
their
mean,
perspective, it was incredibly expensive.
that's what I did. I moved out to Amsterdam. I did my MBA here and stayed and used it to start a business. So
What's the MBA program there? Is it Rotterdam?
No, I did the MBA program at the University of Amsterdam. Rotterdam's program is Erasmus, which is better in the rankings, but less fun than the program I went
Okay, got it. U of A.
to.
There we go.
But I'm because you mentioned your parents also, and I know you talk quite a bit about growing up with a very different lifestyle than most of us grow up with.
How
Um,
dare you? No, 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 no. You're
I
right.
mean, your father's the head of Take Two Entertainment.
Yeah,
He was the chair after Les Moonves at CBS,
he
and
does.
he's very well known also very well known for having an astonishingly good body,
Oh,
coming from a straight man as well.
I,
Um, but
I wasn't, assuming anything from that, but I appreciate you clarifying. But
and then
yeah,
also, your mom's side
are we
of
allowed
the
to
family.
curse on this?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, and then your mom's side of of your family is also, I joked with Peach, the producer of the episode, that when somebody self-describes themselves as a philanthropist, they've probably, have some money behind them, and so
Sure.
your whole sort of, I'm just so interested in how you wound up in comedy in the first place, because so much of comedy for people comes out of their personal struggle. And for you, I assume your personal struggle is different than other people's.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was just like there was a huge opportunity for me to be the first ever rich kid to try doing entertainment. No one has done it before. No rich kids have ever tried to be artists. And so I thought, why don't I be the first? Why don't I blaze this trail? One small step for me, one big step for rich kids everywhere. Sort of like the moon landing of being a Nepo baby entertainer. No, I mean, I think the stereotype of like rich kids doing art is there's a stereotype of people who really have struggles doing art, and there's a stereotype of rich kids doing art. And I think both come from the place of like, if nothing matters, either because your life's so good or your life is so bad, why not do what you really want to do? And I think a lot of people want to make art or do art or whatever you want to call stand up comedy, make medium quality entertainment in small rooms. But I don't know. I mean, comedy was always how I connected with people, and frankly, yeah, like I don't think I would have done it if I didn't have like a bit of a safety net,
Hmm.
that like should it not work out. I think that gave me a lot of confidence and motivation to go really hard at it. Um, was that the question? What was the question?
Yeah, because I'm
I
also
didn't have I didn't have a lot of financial struggles. I mean, I had some family stuff that I thought would be funny to talk about on stage.
Mm,
And I think a lot of people would disagree with this, but like I also think there's an element of my upbringing, given how easy it was and how ridiculously luxurious it was, that is funny to make fun of. And people don't really like hearing from someone who grew up rich, period, or on stage, and I totally get it. I don't really talk about it with like a ton of shame, and I do talk about it with a lot of transparency, and that puts a lot of people off. So, that's their right. I don't fault anyone for that. But I also think it's like it's interesting because everyone like, a lot of people like come from a really poor background, love to talk about that background and make jokes about it. But I'm like, I think it's equally silly and funny. First of all, being poor is not silly. It's more silly and potentially equally funny to come from like a really easy background and then make fun of that.
mm.
So I haven't found a ton of success in doing that. But I it's my perspective, and I'm what I'm not gonna do is become a comedian and come from a dishonest perspective. I'm just gonna come from my own perspective, and if people want to hear it, they are welcome to, and if they don't, they don't have to.
I mean, you mentioned, that you want people who feel like they relate to your work to be the ones who are coming out to your shows in the first place. You must have I mean, while yes, you must be right that you may be putting off some people from because of just your background, but you must have found the right tone of voice or the right way of talking about it, because you've certainly found success on social media with it.
Yeah, I mean, I just try to be straight up honest about everything. The reason why I think wealth comes up so much for me is because um a lot of people don't talk about it, so it becomes this thing that I'm doing potentially differently than other people. Whereas, there's not a bunch of stigma in comedy for people being dishonest about like religion or politics or these other topics that like stand-up comedians often cover. So I try to be honest about my full act, and it's not like if you come see me, I'm just going to constantly be harping on about it. But at the same time, it is kind of like, I do personal comedy, and as I mine my life for stories, the problem with not mentioning it is like all these stories I have, they like start somewhere rich. It's like why it's like why are you in the Caribbean in this story? Or like why does this story take place on a boat? Or like why is this story like in a ski chalet? And so I just kind of like continually got back to the fact of realizing that if I wanted to be fully honest, and it doesn't mean I have to tell every one of those stories, but like, another thing that I think came up a lot is, especially as I've done crowd work, is I just have like, I've gotten a fancy education. So when I do crowd work, like, I think there's a bit of a trope of like someone being like, "What's your job?" And someone's like, "I'm a management consultant." And then the comedian's like, "What's that mean? You manage consultants?" Or like, and they
Right.
play around with that, like, "I don't know what the fuck that is." And my thing is like, I'm like, I do know what that is. I know 20 people that work at those firms, and I completely understand what the job is. I'm not interested in it, and I'm not going to make fun of it because I don't think it's interesting or funny. So I'm gonna go beyond that and find out something else that I think is interesting about you, or I'm gonna move on. But like I try to do comedy to the top of my own education level and intelligence. And um, I'm not uniquely intelligent, but I am probably I've gotten fancier education than a lot of people have had the opportunity to have. And so I know all this random shit about things,
Hmm.
and I use that to work its way into the comedy. But
Hmm.
then when I go back to the question of like, well, why does your background come up so much? It's like, it just feels disingenuous. And people are like, why do you know that? I'm like, well, I don't want to claim I know that because I'm smart, because that's not why. I just know that because like I had an SAT tutor, or like,
Right.
or because I went to, business school because someone paid for it. Like I wouldn't have gone if someone didn't pay for it.
And
So
plus, extreme wealth can be, very funny. And, I had a friend of mine who was working and consulting with, you know, a guy who made a killing in private equity and then stepped back from it. And I'm not going to, say any names or, talk about who that was specifically, but he started with, they started working together for just like a short period, a few weeks, and then that kind of grew and became months, and months became a year. And the stories that he would tell me, as someone who was sitting on the sidelines of this lifestyle and outside of it, but inside of it at the same time,
yeah.
it was just absurd and weird and different and funny. And if comedy itself is just about being observational and being kind of honest and taking a look at what's going on, then certainly someone who has a cockeyed view of the world is probably going to find some humor in whatever circumstance.
Yeah, maybe it's like comedy could either be like tragedy plus time or like luxury right now.
Yeah, I can't say I've ever heard anybody say that, but
Quote
let's
me
go
on
with
that,
that.
Zach. That's gonna blow up, dude.
When when you went to business school and then you sort of decided that you were going to work your way towards stand-up comedy, considering your parents' background, did they give you any pushback, or were they encouraging about it?
My parents were like very encouraging the second that I got followers on the internet. Uh, I think there is it's interesting, like, my dad is, like, probably the biggest believer now, almost to a point where I'm like, "You gotta, like, cool it a little bit," because 'cause he'll be like, he's like, "You're gonna be fucking huge," and I'm like, "Alright, let's, like, one step at a time here. Things are going well, but we could, like, don't." I'm like, "I don't know that I'm gonna be like Dave Chappelle, like, let's just, one thing at a time." But early on, I think, like, they're very practical people,
Hmm.
and they saw me when I was bad, and I think it's hard to ignore when someone's bad. So they were never discouraging, but there was an element of, like, I remember they'd come to see some of the early shows, and they were kind of like, "Yeah,
That
that
was
was
that was great, son.
you did it." And then I think as things started to build, the tune quickly changed. But their heart was always in the right place. I think they were initially more pragmatic about how hard it is to succeed, and just, doubtful as I think anyone would be that it could possibly go as well as it has. And then, I think through a combination of very lucky things, and things that I was good at, and moments in the industry, like, all coalescing at the same time,
Mm.
I kind of quickly got into a place where I was able to do it professionally, and then after that, be able to be financially comfortable doing it at, how I wanted to do it. And so I think that was very encouraging for them to see.
Your dad is Strauss Zelnick. Was he working at CBS when you were starting to go into stand up, or was he, working at Take Two at that point?
He was doing CBS as like a side gig while I
Hmm.
Take Two.
Yeah.
Was I doing stand up when he was at CBS? If I was so new and so bad. I think he stopped being at CBS right before the pandemic or during the pandemic.
Was there ever a moment where you were sort of, pushing him to, give you a little bit of a boost, or, or nudge you in the right direction or anything like that?
No, no. I mean, I think, like, there are people in the industry, specifically on the representation side,
Hmm.
that knew my family when it was time for me to be represented, but they
Hmm.
also knew me before it was time for me to be represented. So I don't think it hurt when I was getting representation that, like, there were higher up people that were aware of me only because of my parents. But no, there was never like it would be such a ludicrous. I know, like, true nepotism happens in that way, where it's like literally like, give my kid a job. But at the time that he was at CBS, like, I was so untalented and unskilled at this that to give me any kind of job just would have been absolutely ludicrous. Um, and I think, like, the job I would have been ready for would have been so minuscule. It would have been like the chairman coming down and being like, give him, like, the role of, like, sex offender 3 on SVU or whatever. Like, it just wouldn't have. I don't think anyone would have wanted that. But no,
Well,
I
it
mean,
was CBS, so it would have been NCIS, I guess. But
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, sure. I'm not even familiar with the. Yeah. But what I will say is, I don't know, what I like about stand up is, like, I've had a ton of help in having enough financial comfort to go after it and
Hmm.
get the time on stage. In terms of how I am at stand up comedy, just see me live and you decide. But there's no point at which, like, there's no point at which, like, I tell a joke and someone's like, "Does he have a rich dad?" He does. Like, you're not gonna laugh because my
Yeah.
daddy's who he is. So that's what I like about stand-up comedy, is at the end of the day, like, my skill is gonna be built on it, based on who I am. And, my skills also based on the opportunities I've had, and those are informed by my background. But, you think it's good or you don't think it's good. But you're not gonna think it's good because, uh, I have some kind of nepotism there.
Mm. You know, a lot of people think that just to be successful in any job or any role is just to kind of be coachable and be open to modifying what you're doing or changing or developing. Is that kind of what took you from being, you know, uh, an aspiring stand up with, not very good, whatever you want to call it, with just not able to perform well in the first early days, to, being more spontaneous on stage and finding your jokes and your rhythm on stage now?
I mean, you have to listen to the crowd. Um, but I think the biggest thing for me was like I was so afraid of it. Um, because when you're not doing well, it's a very like I had seen a lot everyone's seen bad stand-up, but I had come from New York City, so I had been the kinda, like, growing up, the kinda guy that, like, stumbled into a bad bar show or into an open mic, and you're sitting in the back, and you're like, "Oh, this is, like, so painful for the person on stage," and I think I had probably an oversized fear of being that guy on stage who's not connecting, who doesn't understand they're not connecting, like, a real fear. It's probably why I go on and on about my background is like I have this
Mm,
kind of obsession with getting ahead of it and being self-aware and never being the guy that's like not naming the thing that you're thinking. So I had a lot of fear of stand up for that reason because um I just know how embarrassing it can be when you're bad and you can't be it's very hard to be good when you start. I guess some people are, but I wasn't. So what helped me was just doing more and more of it and getting comfortable so that I had sort of a natural way about myself on stage.
mhm,
Um, the other thing that was tough for me when I started was I didn't watch a lot of stand-up growing up. I watched the huge people, like
hmm.
Chris Rock and Louis C.K., but like I wasn't a student of stand-up comedy. I didn't watch like Doug Stanhope and all these, Dave Attell, all these people who are like heroes to stand-up comedians. I
The
wasn't
stand-ups, right?
yeah, I
Yeah,
wasn't,
yeah.
like, fluent in, like in terms of, like, your favorite comic's favorite comic or whatever.
Mm,
And so I didn't really have a great frame of reference for, like, how to write a joke. But I
mm,
think that ultimately so it meant I was worse when I started because I wasn't using structure and technique to write. But as I've developed, I actually don't think that's always a bad thing because I think there's some people that develop and write like someone else, and I
mm.
think I've also written like someone else. I've for many years I wrote like my friend Jamie because I was around him so much. But then I sort of reverted back to having, writing jokes the way that I write them, which is I don't know, not technically very sound, but fun, like
Mm.
goofy and
Were
very
you were you more into improv comedy? Because I know when you were at Williams College, you had the idea of doing improv, but that didn't work out. But was improv more of your thing if you weren't so much into stand up?
No, I tried improv before I was a stand-up just because I found improv less scary, like the prospect of being up there with a group versus being up there alone. And sort of like blaming the unfunny on someone else. But I wasn't very good at it. Great improv is amazing to watch. Like no shade on improv. I did UCB 101 through 401, like the classes, but
Yeah.
I don't know. I was probably too young. I wouldn't mind trying it now, but I was a little. I might mind trying it now. Now that I picture myself doing improv, I think I was just a little too humiliated. It's stand-up's embarrassing. Improv at its best is way better than stand-up. Improv at its worst manages to be even more embarrassing than stand-up, and that's saying a lot.
You also talk, you've talked a lot about also, being harassed as a Jewish kid growing up, which,
I
also,
did?
I think you've
When did
talked about it. Yeah. Did you?
maybe on John Marco's podcast, actually. Yeah, did I talk about it?
Yeah. And, giving up the names of the people who are harassing you and things like that. But
Oh,
I
yeah,
guess,
yeah.
I guess
That
what
was
I'm,
one time, though. I don't think it
yeah.
was, like, central to my not by the way, not getting into all the shit that's going on now, but it was not central to my growing up experience that I
Mhm.
struggled with being Jewish, but one time, these kids at a party were crazy anti-Semitic to me, and I will never forget them. And
Right.
if you are listening, which you aren't, I haven't forgotten. I've not forgotten.
So I guess because I was thinking about that and thinking about how initially your worries about doing stand up were along the lines of embarrassment or embarrassing yourself, and so I'm just kind of curious, like how do you get over that hump where is that it must be a challenge that you at some point you have to overcome.
Yeah, of like just being embarrassing on stage.
or just being worried that you won't do well or that you'll embarrass yourself. Yeah.
How is that connected to anti-Semitism?
No, not to anti-Semitism, but I meant more like
To getting bullied?
to being bullied or harassed
Sure,
in
sure,
some
sure.
way was kind of what I was thinking of.
Um,
But you weren't bullied or harassed except the one time.
not in a like a repetitive way.
Yeah.
I think for me, so like when I started stand up, sometimes this is still my goal, but certainly when I started, I wanted to be like the version of myself that I was around my best friends. Like I was this funny, comfortable, charming version of myself, and I felt like I could be that way around my friends. How could I be that way around strangers? And if I could find that around strangers, then I could be really good at this. That was like my vision. It was never about like being the best or I don't know. Different people think different things. I was never trying to like be the number one. I was just trying to be like the most myself.
Hmm.
Which was always like I remember watching the Gary Shandling documentary that Judd Apatow
Oh,
made, and
that's
that was
so
always
good.
like
Yeah.
Gary's approach to comedy, which I think really resonated with me. Um, and so I was thinking about that a lot, and I think the biggest hump in stand up was making friends who were comedians.
Mm,
Because then once I had friends who were comedians, I felt like I was part of something that I was doing with my friends. I was always like a very friend-oriented person, but then when college ended, all my friends went into like regular jobs, you know?
right.
And so I felt a lack of community in stand-up, which then made me feel like um really alone and also really like unfunny
Hmm.
because I didn't feel surrounded by like this energy that I was so used to that I needed or I felt like I needed to be funny. And then that summer that we started that club, it really helped because I started to make friends in stand up and I started to realize like, okay, there are people that have my sense of humor and my tone and who are stand up comedians and that can like, you know, I don't know, started to feel better.
Who are your friends in stand up?
Jamie Wolf is my king. Um, Ashley Gavin, John Kennedy, um, Alex Dragovich, Jeffrey Osmus, Maddie Weiner, Emil Wakim. There's a big community now of young, funny people in New York, and it's cool.
Was
It's
there
fun.
anybody that kind of took a mentoring role towards you in some way?
Yeah, Ashley Gavin mentored me a lot. She was like the original person who had sort of cracked the code on the internet and how you could use the internet to get people to come see you at shows. And she was pretty adamant about filming and posting stand-up comedy very, very early on, and also using that to like collect data and collect emails and use those things to get people out to shows. So Ashley, what was interesting about Ashley is also from New York City and kind of had a very similar upbringing to mine. At one point, we like lived 5 blocks away from each other, although we
Hmm.
never knew each other. And so she was the first person who had my background and had made it work. And that was also just like very encouraging to me.
I mean, it's funny because the way that you're talking about mentorship in the stand-up world isn't about someone who's like helping you along with the process of writing a joke or punching up a joke or making it funnier. It's you talk about the mentorship in it at like stand-up as a business, which is hilarious because not a lot of comedians talk about their mentors or their heroes in stand-up in that way.
Yeah, I mean, Ashley also helped me creatively. I think, she was the first person to bring me out onto the road, so I got to watch her.
Mm,
Jamie helped me a lot creatively, just in terms of like really helping me um, throw things out that didn't make sense. Jamie, one thing Jamie did very well for me creatively was to like help stop me from going to places that, young comedians want to go to all types of extreme places that are sort of unnecessary, right? Like you want to think of a bad example of something, and so you like jump to the Holocaust, or you like jump to pedophilia, when in reality you could pick like a more relatable example of something that sucks, like traffic. You know what I
Right.
mean? And it's like, but you're young and you're thinking like, well, wouldn't it be funny if I just like mentioned pedophilia out of nowhere? And the answer is like, no, it would be really off-putting for people. But
Yeah.
like you can't stop yourself because you think that it would be really funny at the time. Because it's sort of a funny idea until you do it. And then you're like, no, that was just weird.
Right.
Um, but but uh no, I mean, I think also, you know, it's hard to have too much creative mentorship in stand-up because at a certain point you gotta go up there and do what works for you. And someone
Mhm.
could even like give you an amazing joke, but you can't pull it off because of your vibe. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
writing for other people or helping them with what works, it's tough. Like even now, if I have a joke I like, I might run it by another comic, but my best bet is just to do it and see how it sounds coming out of my mouth.
Mm.
Because I can pull things off other people can't, and I can't pull things off other people can.
Right.
You know? I mean, speaking of like pedophilia, it's like Ashley was working on a pedophile joke that we were talking about the other day, and it's
Yeah.
like Ashley's a woman, and I think it lands differently
Mm.
than me, who's like, you know, kind of like I'm like a 30-year-old guy. I'm kind of like prime pedophile age. So it's like it's like it's just not as funny to be me and talk about pedophilia as it is to be her because she seems more disconnected from it.
I- I'm just imagining the poster, image for this podcast being, like prime pedophilia age.
Yeah, there you
Lucas
go.
Zelnick. Yeah.
You could put the quotes in there. Yeah. I'm of prime pedophile age. I'm aging into pedophilia. No, I'm not aging into pedophilia. I'm starting to have the stats of a pedophile.
Because this is also something we wanted to talk about with you was not pedophilia
Pedophilia?
specifically, not specifically, no, but you talk about a lot of taboo things. I mean, you said that you had done a lot of race relation jokes or talking about that, but also a lot of jokes about gender, people with disabilities or differently abled people. And I'm just curious, do you ever have a concern about being canceled? Is that a fear of yours?
No. I don't even no. I mean, I do things that like upset small groups of people sometimes, but I don't know. It's canceled is like you gotta like really upset a lot of people at the same time over some kind of like pattern of behavior. I mean, I don't try to be nice I don't try to be nice in my jokes, but I don't have any interest in being mean either.
Hmm.
So like I don't know, people do this thing on the internet which is it's nice, you know, but it's like and when I've interacted with like a trans person, for example, they're like, wow, like this is how you do humor without punching down. And there's like a lot of like obsession of like, wow, you treated this person like a human. And I don't, I appreciate it, but it's also like the bar is so low at this point where it's like, yeah, I don't ever want to go on stage and shit on someone. And certainly not in such a way that would sincerely make them feel bad. Like that's just I'm there to make people have a good time, and I won't always make people have a good time. And I think there's certain political things I think that won't make certain people have a good time. Like when I say supportive things about trans people, there are people that really don't like that. But
Hmm.
so I guess if I was gonna get canceled by anyone, I'd be canceled by the right wing because they're fucking pussies these days. The right wing is like whiny little fucking snowflake bitches, way worse than the left wing. Like the left wing just gets mad at you for like the left wing gets mad at you for like saying you don't like something that's gay, and then the right wing gets mad at you for like being gay, which is like way worse.
Right. Right.
But I don't know. I don't think anyone really cares enough anymore if you're not doing something that's awful. But also it's like fine, then whatever, cancel me. I don't really give a shit.
I mean, it's amazing to be in a position to be able to say that, right?
Yeah, I mean, people get I'm not saying people don't get quote unquote canceled or have their careers harmed over shit that like they don't deserve to have it harmed over, but um I just think if you're I don't worry about something I say. I don't worry about something I say.
Hmm.
There's certain I say things that I believe that come from my place of experience, and I mostly stand by the things I say, not always, and when I don't, I usually try to back them up. I'm totally fine to walk back a comment. That's the other thing. People are like, "Won't walk back a comment." I'm like, "So you stand behind everything you've said? You've never gone on the damn Yankee podcast and talked about pedophilia for too long, really?" So it's like I'm fine walking it back, but I don't know. It's just I don't feel like I've ever said anything that's like not walk backable or
Hmm.
thought anything that's not walk backable. I've been lucky enough to grow up sort of with consistent values. I'm not like one of those kids that like there's no like picture of me doing blackface at a Halloween party. You know what I mean?
Not
There is a
yet.
picture of me from prom heiling Hitler, but I'm Jewish, so it was kind of a joke about how I was a blonde Jew. But yeah, if that one gets out, I'll just let you guys know that I'm a Jew and I don't like Hitler.
All right. Well, I think don't like Hitler is maybe a good place to leave this. So I mean, we're super looking forward to having you here in Amsterdam in a couple of months, and good luck with everything, Lucas. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's been great.
Bless Zach. Bless up. I'll see you at the show.
I hope so. Yeah, I'd love to.
Yeah, non-committal. I love that.
All right. Thanks so much.
All right, bye.
Damn Yankee is produced in partnership with NL Times, the top choice for English language news from the Netherlands. Founded nearly 15 years ago, NL Times grew to become the #1 site for information about this country, featuring more news stories every day of the week than any other website. Keep tabs on the latest top stories and breaking news from across the entire country, not only in Amsterdam, Rotterdam, and The Hague. Find out more at nltimes.nl. Damn Yankee is an NL Times podcast. The show was created by me and Peach Rizzo. Peach produced this episode, and Marcus Engel edited the episode.